Welcome to the Microsoft Security Insights Podcast with your hosts, Franklin Grimberg and Edward Walton, where we discuss Microsoft 365 security and Azure security news and products. Recorded January 26, 2022. Good evening, Franklin. Good evening, Brody. Good evening, Rod. And good evening to our guests who will introduce themselves a little bit later. How are you guys doing?
Busy.
I could be better.
I'm glad I'm not Rod Trent.
Yeah.
Yes.
Nobody wants to be me right now. Usually it's the other way around. Hey, but guess what? Guess what came yesterday?
Nice. You stay published, don't
A
you?
brand new book is out. So
I'll show off. I'll show off a book next week. So
yeah.
What is this book? We told our guests, make sure that when you talk, people won't be able to see because they're going to listen to it on the podcast.
Well,
what's the first thing Rod does? Shows up a picture of the book and says it's a book.
Frank, there's only one rule for this podcast, and it's to have fun. It's not.
That's right. All right.
Yeah.
So what is this book you're talking about here?
So this is the Microsoft Sentinel in Action. It's actually second edition. The first edition was named something completely different, but the second edition. Well, the funny thing is, it just released. I may be the first person in the entire world to have a hard copy right now, which is actually kind of cool. Because I showed this off over social media, and people were like, "You suck."
yeah, you suck.
I felt pretty good about it. So,
What's the Microsoft Sentinel in Action? So what's it about? Obviously about Sentinel, but
it's
give us a little bit more depth.
It's a product guide. It does go a little bit more in depth. Some real world use cases and things like that. However, just like any book, any physical copy of a book, it's already 2 months behind what the product is. So, no, I'm just kidding.
At least you got the name right.
I still like paper in touch. And can I get a signed copy? Are you going to bless us with? Yeah, I don't know.
You had involvement with this book?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was. I'm just tech editor. A couple of my good buddies, they wrote it.
Awesome, Rod.
And Richard Diver.
Oh, I ain't talked to Richard in a while. I need to
Yeah,
catch up with him. Cordell and Joe should know Richard because he's part of Madonna's team. That's part of Microsoft partnerships.
She's moving on, by the way. She's moving on.
Madonna's like time zone Asia Pac.
Yep, she's moving to Singapore, right?
Yep. Just talked to her last week. We haven't connected much with Richard, but we need to. We do a lot with the international folks on her team for sure. She actually spoke at our sales kickoff last month or last quarter.
Awesome. I need to reach out to Madonna, check in, and ask her a couple of questions. Singapore, yeah, been there for times.
She has a new album coming out, by the way, too. I think I'm not sure. Madonna.
We need to get Gene back on to do the cybersecurity rap, right? Part 2. Hey, but anything interesting? I listened to some good MDI stuff today, man. The roadmap was pretty decent on the CS blocker thing today. That was pretty good. Found an interesting nuance in the Sentinel portal. Azure, actually, I won't say the Sentinel portal because there is no Sentinel portal, but the Azure portal and the Sentinel blade in that the data connector stuff was sort of janky. And I thought it was me and thought it was Android, and Rod was like, no, it's it. And it seems to be very browser specific.
No, it's not. It's a confirmed bug. As of our last discussion, it's a confirmed bug and they're working on it. So, okay.
There you go. We find the bugs, baby. And then, so what else have I broken? I took the workbook, Rod, that you and I had sort of worked on for the Hong Kong login stuff. I got that taken care of.
Awesome.
And put in. So that's pretty good. Help the customer out with some MDE stuff with the network scanning stuff. I haven't touched SNMP in so long, right? And then realizing 3 has to have authentication, so I played around with that. Bro, do you do anything interesting other than jump out of helicopters on skis like you James Bond?
Brody's awesome.
When you heli ski, the helicopter lands on the mountain, and then you get out in an orderly and safe fashion and put your stuff on.
You don't have to tell us that. Come on.
But that's going to scare people away. If you go heli skiing, you don't jump out of helicopter. That's happened.
You jump out, you parachute, and then you actually
you glide with your snowboard on, and then you land on the mountain, disconnect your chute, and then just go for it.
It's your. You can lie like you do on LinkedIn about winning the competition. It's fine.
I won the time-based competition. Yeah, that's and yes, Rod. They obviously hand out guns for wildlife. How else would you protect yourself from wildlife? Yeah.
So
what else am I doing? I'm doing a major security compliance assessment for a Big Four consulting firm. I got handpicked for it, and it's like the hardest thing I've ever had to do so far. So all my brain power is there this week and next. And if we're really good, we'll get a follow-up gig to do the work. So it's very exciting. Yeah, learning a lot.
I can tell you're busy because you've been on Do Not Disturb like forever.
That's the indicator. Yeah.
I was like, he's busy. I'm not going to bother him. I had an interesting conversation about law collection and sitting on some other stuff with Rod today. I'm going to test it out in the lab. Franklin, what have you been breaking?
I've just been doing exam work, so overloaded with that. So
is that why Teams doesn't work?
Pretty much. Yeah, that's why Teams doesn't work. And Rod, you always working on something. If you're not writing books, you're writing worldwide famous KQL training series and all this other stuff. Any normal human mortal stuff that you're doing?
But by the way, nobody got my joke when you were speaking the other day at this KQL cafe thing.
The Pop-Tarts thing.
Yeah, nobody got the joke. Nobody liked
I got it. But then I know Rod, so I get the joke, right? Yeah, the KQL thing was pretty cool. I didn't like having to go in and join Meetup and all that other stuff, but if that's still the way that you got to do it, you got to do it.
That was the first one. I think they'll get better. Yeah.
Well, what I also did was they have a Twitter and a Facebook. So you know how much I don't like Facebook, but it was actually easier to navigate to be able to see some of the stuff, right?
Yeah.
I think that's it's Facebook, one or two. Well, so we don't consume all the time, unless anybody has any other things they'd like to communicate about what they're doing. Brody, your box is in transit. It's in Redmond somewhere. So the last place we could track the tracking number was in Redmond.
Hilarious. So for history here, Ed's like, send me a letter because you're from Canada, this mystical country on the other side of the world, and I don't know how to send mail to Canada. So I send him a letter with a return address on the back, which, by the way, I haven't bought a stamp in I don't know how many years. So that was fun. And then I send Ed a very nice card, and he's like, okay, I'll use the return address to send me back a package. And somehow it gets to Redmond. So what happened there, Ed? What happened?
When I'm shipping international using the Microsoft benefits, it goes to the international shipping, which is out of Redmond. They literally open the box.
Oh my goodness.
And they take the customs form out, rebox it, slap it on there, and then they send it. So I had to, you have to declare everything. And I sent you a box of stuff.
Okay, great. I can't wait to receive this box.
Are you surprised that anything related to Ed doesn't make a wrong turn, racing to Canada?
Yeah, no doubt. Like, you sent it before Christmas, I'm pretty sure. Anyway, I can't wait to receive this box of stuff. I have a feeling you're sending me like a whole network cabinet or something that's going to really make my wife stoked. So I can't wait to receive this pallet of stuff.
Not quite that, but
okay.
Definitely as we build out this project of ours where we're going to build out this lab between the four of us, because I'm tired of using Microsoft's lab that when I go in there, like, where did it go?
Yeah, fair.
We'll just do our own, right? And plus, we want our own lab because I got the guys at Red Canary to agree to give us an NFR so we can put in our demos, right? Guys need to see this working together, right?
Sweet.
I'm pretty sure they said yes. So, but without further ado, I'd like to go ahead and introduce our guest. I'm going to do a very, low altitude intro. I'm going to allow you to intro yourself. There are no restrictions other than don't say anything that could get you in trouble. Pub your entity as much as you want. There's nothing here called a shameless plug. It's only shameless if you don't plug yourself, right? And that's it. So Red Canary is one of the premier detections for endpoint as a standalone, but definitely in partnership with the different XDR and EDR platforms. We're more concerned with how they are interacting with Microsoft. My exposure to them is I have been familiar with their Atomic Red team, and I'll let them talk about that if they want to. But I was part of a webinar and I heard it and I'm like, wow, this is pretty cool. Never knew anything about this. And so I started pinging some of my peers in the field. And I'm like, oh yeah, these guys are solid. Been around doing all these other things, right? And so we started to build up a little bit of a rapport and everything else. I have no shame in how I go about my business. I went to Red Canary, submitted my qualifications, tried to join the team. They told me to kick rocks. I'm like, come back to us when you pass the SC 200. I think is what they told me, right? But just joking. But I wanted them to come on to talk about their product in a manner that we can't. They are in the thing, and they're going to have more intimacy and inside information on what this partnership with Microsoft looks like. MDE plus Red Canary equals less noise and everything. So without further ado, I'm going to start off with Cordell and then Joe, whomever wants to go first. Introduce yourself, a blurb. You guys figure out what the cadence is about who talks about what. We'll ask them, like I said, we don't ask stump the chump questions. So we definitely want them to ask very fair questions because we want our users, we want our listeners to go look at your site. We want them to go and do it. And so we're going to put it all over LinkedIn and all that stuff. So Mr. Cordell, go ahead, sir.
Yeah. Thanks, Edward. I don't think those were the exact words we told you in response, but that's something close, maybe. Huh? Thanks for having us on. It was great. We look forward to working together even in the future at some point because I think there's a lot of synergies here. Wanted to share that the good news, even since we last spoke, that we are no longer just Defender for endpoint. We now have added identity, Sentinel, email, and pretty soon the cloud stuff as well. So just cranking along. Our engineering and product teams have been heads down on that, and Microsoft obviously is square in the middle of all of those integrations, and in some cases the only one. We'll talk more about that. So I've been at Red Canary for 3 years. I joined to relaunch our automation platform. So we have it's a SOAR light, I would call it, right? It's not a full-blown SOAR. It's designed to really be the glue that stitches together, threats and detections and threats or confirmed detections that come from our customers and the Microsoft API around live response. So we use a lot of the live response actions and some others behind the scenes to really just kind of stitch those things together and make them work very tightly in the middle of a confirmed threat. After that was kind of rebranded and relaunched, jumped into, at the time we launched it as a division. So it was the Red Canary plus Microsoft Security division, and literally a separate group in our little annex in the office there that was kind of black ops, if you will. Go figure out if you can do, add the Red Canary sauce, the special sauce to what Defender is doing. And if something comes out on the other side that's interesting to customers, then let's go. And happy to report 2.5 years later, we found the secret recipe there, and it's just been gangbusters ever since. I'm growing at 50-100% quarter over quarter, year over year, and Microsoft and the security efforts there have really paid off in the marketplace. And our CEO likes to say that Microsoft has come the farthest, the fastest of any security vendor that we work with. So that's kudos to you guys and the teams working on it. I know there are hundreds of folks there. My entrance into cybersecurity was kind of an interesting angle. I just thought I'd share that I spent the prior 6 years, so let's call it 10 years ago-ish, got into the ad tech industry actually, and spent a lot of time with real-time bidding and figuring out ad platforms and how to serve digital ads, globally at scale. And one of the big problems there turns out to be the fact that there are these crazy things called botnets, and there's these crazy things called C2 type infrastructures. They're trying to pull budget out of ad. The more you can drop fraudulent ads out there, if you're trying to make money, fake money, the better. And so there was a huge influx of not only bots but also fake URLs and everything. And so I ended up going into an angle of that, or an edge of that industry called brand safety. And so that really what led me into cybersecurity, because we started digging into, which URLs are good, bad, ugly, right? What's going on the URL side, and then also the bot side of things. We would bring that together to an ad tech company and say, hey, you're spending $100 million a year with Nike and the brands like that are running your digital campaigns, and a quarter of that's getting sucked into fake bots, since not real humans, right? And so as we did that, the customer base was also super interested. Another customer base that was interested there were the network filtering guys, right? So we had folks like Trend Micro and Tipping Point and ArcSight and all the like, who were looking for what are bad URLs out on the internet, and how do we do this web filtering across many different categories. And so, ended up at RSA probably 6-7 years back, looking around and like, this is an amazing industry. It's growing like gangbusters. It's not going to go away. And so that's kind of the short story on how I ended up moving into cybersecurity from ad tech, and haven't looked back. I love cybersecurity, the passion and the ability to connect your passion with how we're helping customers, right? Staying safe, keeping their companies moving forward, and the like. Just a strong connection there. So love cybersecurity, love being at Red Canary, and I will hand it over to Joe.
Thanks, Cordell. So I joined Cordell's team about 1.5 years ago, and it was as a principal solution specialist. So really what I do here is I'm a Microsoft product specialist. So I'm involved in a lot of the efforts here in terms of helping our product management team with roadmap items, kind of investigating new Microsoft technologies and how they could integrate into Red Canary services, being on the forefront of that. I run our lab, so doing a lot of the work with all the emerging kind of public preview parts of Microsoft, and really just everything, even supporting sales, supporting basically all the efforts that that Microsoft plus Red Canary is involved in. And so security background, like Cordell mentioned, I got here in kind of an interesting way. I was actually involved with competitive intelligence for another organization, and I just, we were competing with Microsoft at the time, and I was tasked with evaluating Microsoft products. And throughout that whole kind of tear down and evaluation process, I realized, like, man, Microsoft is doing really good. Like, I really, really like this. Like, wow. Like, and so a year went by and things got even better and better. And I thought to myself, like, man, Microsoft's going to take over the world with this, and I want to be involved. Like, I really, really want to be involved somehow. And I didn't know if that was going to be through Microsoft or if that was going to be through some other way. And that's when I kind of found this job posting for a Microsoft principal solution specialist that really focused a lot on Defender for Endpoint. And that was, the company that I worked at previously was an endpoint security company. So I was doing a lot of intelligence work that was endpoint focused. It was a long path kind of getting there. Did digital forensics. I did incident response prior to that. I was a red teamer for a couple of years doing consulting work, doing that. I worked doing security engineering and architecture at a kind of a vendor agnostic MSSP for a number of years. So I've had the opportunity between that and between my competitive intel experience to get my hands dirty with a lot of different tools and really get to see a lot of the industry. And really after all that, I really ended up just enjoying what I see happening the most. And I had the most passion for what I see happening in the Microsoft XDR space. And so I'd really just decided, I would really like to specialize here. I want to dig in a little deeper, and I want to take all the skills that I have to really help our customers and help Red Canary with their mission. And honestly, I haven't looked back. It's been a phenomenal experience seeing our customer base grow and seeing our product grow and really being a part of that along the way and helping with those partnerships and just in general, I love working with the tools. So,
yeah. Well, that goes back to validate you guys, passion for it and depth and experience. So, Frank is an MDE like guru, right? Detection, awesome. Forensics, evasion, red team. That's his superpower. We're part of the Legion of Doom over here, right? Everybody has superpowers, but we use our powers for good. Love sometimes. So what I wanted to ask you is the very simple question. Who is Red Canary and what do you guys do?
You bet. Love it. We are an extension of our customers' security teams. That's what we hear over and over. And so, you boil it down. What does that mean? We literally, with some of our teams, we have, daily, weekly syncs, depending on what they need. If they're in the middle of a, particularly invasive threat or some things they're dealing with, we actually have an incident handling team that comes into the picture as well. But that's what we look at ourselves as. We are industry experts. We bring that to the table. And when you buy Red Canary, it's It's one line item, and you get all of the stuff that we're going to talk about today. So MDR is the industry term, if you will, managed detection and response. Super deep on the endpoint side, obviously, and I'll share a little bit more about that, but also broad in the Defender for Azure, Defender for Identity, Azure for Identity, Sentinel, email, and cloud now coming. So that broad ability to look at all of the telemetry and the alerts that a customer is dealing with. And we allow our customers to have nights and weekends, right? So we're essentially a managed SOC, if you think of it in that manner. And we have a full investigation approach that we take. So we don't just reprioritize and kind of stack rank alerts. We actually have hands-on people, a team of 24/7 detection engineers that are watching all of the data coming through in the tip-offs and investigating them. So that's what we do for our customers is we extend their team, and we take the front lines so that they can have normal lives and go work on high priority projects, research, build out defenses and things like that. So we're a software, and to put a finer point on it, we're a software plus services company. So we've got a detection engine with we'll talk more about that, with the ability to run detection logic and analysis there, as well as a massive team of awesome people. And we kind of stitch those two things together, right? The AI, ML, all those terms kind of thrown in the bucket, but really it's a detection engine combined with a SaaS offering and the people behind the scenes that deliver it.
So based on what you just told me, and between you and Joe, you guys can answer this question, is that you can be a standalone, but you seem to be able to augment different XDR, EDR type of products, right? So your partnership with Microsoft went from being 100% competitive to, lack of a better term, frenemy, right? And it looks to be that. So explain to our users, what is the integration if someone is a fairly large MDE? And for MDE, to our listeners, by now, if you haven't got the acronyms, Microsoft Defender for Endpoint. How is that interaction and combination of products gives them nights and weekends back?
Yeah, definitely. Joe, you want to kind of start with that one, and then I can jump in and provide some color if needed?
Yeah, absolutely. So, at a technical level, the integrations are really revolve around Microsoft's ability to export data. And so Microsoft has a really fantastic API, the Defender streaming API. So everything that's available inside of the advanced hunting platform is information that we now have available at Red Canary, right? So when you think about Red Canary as a platform, as a total, you're really looking at the manpower that Cordell mentioned, but then also at the intellectual property, which is our detectors and the power that's behind that with our threat intelligence that really kind of powers the core of that MITRE ATT&CK framework aligned detection group, right? Everything that we have there. And so it's getting the data out of Defender, right? And we look at Defender alerts too. Don't get me wrong. We pull from the API there. We're going to look at that. And we do think that they're extremely valuable, but really the integration is the value that goes above and beyond just what Microsoft is able to provide out of the box. Because when you think about Microsoft, you think about product design philosophy, they're trying to cater to everyone, right? They have to make this thing, they have to make it so that people are able, that they're not inundated, that they don't fire this thing up and just drown in alerts. Well, we have the expertise on our side to filter through a lot of the granular data. So we can take all of the streaming API, all the telemetry from all the endpoints. We can apply our detectors to it, which, there's some magic that happens on the back end there that Cordell's going to talk about architecturally that allows us to do that. And, by doing that, we're providing that tremendous amount of value just above and beyond what Defender would find. And we have like a lot of tangible examples where, customers would have things like ransomware in their environment, where there's just like just a couple indicators of compromise that otherwise wouldn't have been enough to bubble up an MDE alone, but the data is there. And, it's those things that really, provide the extra value above and beyond to customers, where they're saying, hey, look, Red Canary's there. They're looking 24/7. They're seeing the data streaming live, and they have our back, right? They know if something's going to come out, it's not just purely limited to what we have from a detection policy perspective in MDE, which I know you guys being MDE gurus, that detection policy isn't transparent and it's not something that's visible to end users. So, we're helping provide that extra layer of like, hey, you can kind of trust that all of the data is being looked at, and you're having that human element that's involved with filtering that data down into stuff that's very, very, very meaningful.
And so with your product, it's the strength of it. Does your customer have to go through your managed or a co-managed SOC offering, or can they sort of integrate both of the products and just have you send an alert and let them sort of choose the incident response levels? Or is it part of coming onto Red Canary is to be onboarded into our co-managed detection and alerting and things along that line? Is this a partnership with your customers?
Yeah, so it's not available standalone. If the engine isn't something you can just take out and unbolt, if you will, and sell separately. So it is a full managed MDR service. What we're doing under the hood, if you will, is much different, as far as I can tell, than everyone else out there. And that is, one, we are ingesting all of the raw telemetry. So we pull that in, by the terabytes and petabytes, right? It's a massive ingest process. We do that with all of our MDE customers. And so as soon as they flip the switch, we pull that. Of course, we suck in all the alerts and everything like Joe mentioned. We also do the same if they turn it on for identity, for the different products as well. So that all kind of goes into the pool. And then the difference, if you mentioned we're doing this for audio only, but I have kind of a waterfall type slide here that I would normally use. But essentially it's a left to right, like, hundreds of gigs on the far left of terabytes of data, let's say, coming in. Our engine cranks through that from a software perspective and finds the needles in the haystack of potentially interesting things, right? And at that point, then it hands it off to our detection engineering workbench, at which they have a queue, and they're literally going through those and investigating them for our customers. So the difference is, if you get a Defender alert, that triggers the let's say without Red Canary, that triggers the oh crap response, right? Like, it's red, it's bad. Let's go look at it. We have to go figure out how bad is bad. Is it really worthy of waking up the CISO at 2 a.m. or whatever, right? They're ringing the bell, or is it just bad enough that we can wait for business hours, or let's just isolate the machine and wait, right? Like, trying to sort through those details, like what's the severity. Defender is doing. We work a lot with the dev team, the ILDC crew over in Israel. And in fact, it was Rob Lefferts that reached out to our CEO about 3.5 years ago now, to start this integration because of our reputation in the industry and the point that we sit at, that the juxtaposition, if you will, of the crossroads of other EDR solutions, and said, hey, we're gonna take Defender, right, the AV piece, and we're gonna create this EDR thing, and it's gonna be a whole new product vision and naming and all that stuff. So, they kept the Defender name, which unfortunately has some baggage from 20 years ago, but that's a marketing decision. They'll get past that, I'm sure. You guys have done that in spades. So the blended product offering, right? Left brain AV, right brain EDR, has created this EPP. That's kind of the industry terminology for what it falls into, kind of enterprise. Excuse me. Someone fill me in here. Brody,
I don't know. That is a TLA. I don't know. Do you know what a TLA is, Cordell?
No, go for it.
It's a 3-letter acronym.
3-letter acronym. I think it's enterprise protect. Joe, what is it now? I'm drawing a blank.
It's endpoint. It's just endpoint protection platform.
There we go. Endpoint. Okay, that was it. Yeah. So it's AV combined with EDR, right? That's what like the CrowdStrikes and the folks out there that are not everyone can really stack up with the AV and the EDR components. So they created that EPP bucket. Thank you, Joe. Endpoint protection platform. So So that's what Defender offers to customers. And so to get to your point, Edward, no, they don't have the ability to just unbolt the engine and do that, because what we're doing is it's really that supercharging or that better together story with Defender. So we increase the detections by about 4x. I think it's 3.8x last we measured. The confirmed detections that come out of Defender alone. We have a very robust set of behavioral detectors that look at that data, as Joe mentioned, in some very innovative ways. And then we take those and we don't just throw them over the fence to the customer. At that point, we say, no, we've got detection engineers that need to look at this. And so that's a very, I guess that kind of helps understand why we don't commit to, and some in the industry do, right, throw out these 20-minute guaranteed SLAs, like you're going to get an alert in 20 minutes from when it happens, or that type of thing. Our approach, our opinion is that it is much better as a security team, especially as one who's woke up at 2 a.m. trying to deal with a potential threat, that it's been fully researched, fully investigated, and maybe we take 2 hours to do it, let's say, but it's been double verified with a second set of eyes on our detection engineering team. And so when it comes to you, we actually create, and this would be another live demo screen I would show, but we'll just talk through it for the purposes of audio. It would be what we call a detection timeline, that at the very top, it starts with the threat, and then you're literally going process by process, and our detection engineers and some of our workbench software stitches that together for the customer. And so it's pulling in things that are necessary from Defender and putting them in the timeline, and ignoring other things, right? Like kind of silencing a lot of that other noise that maybe is more informational or not needed, because we're laser focused on detecting a threat, right? So when they see that timeline, they can, it may be 5-10 things, it may be 50, but they know exactly what's going on in that environment on that endpoint, because our team has really told the story, and there's notes in there about this looks just like calc.exe launching, but it's a test of lateral movement out of a PowerShell thing coming from Word, right? It's really kind of getting into the details of what's happening on that machine and why we're putting a red confirmed detection, wake you guys up type of thing. So if you look at the left side of that visual picture, or that mental picture that we have, it's ingesting all of the data, finding the needles, and then we really go through even the needles to figure out which ones and which ones are the bad ones, right? And what's the bad stuff in there to pull out and highlight. We have an automation piece that will jump in and do things with the live response API on the Microsoft side. But then if we find something that's bad enough, let's say it's like, confirmed detection or confirmed threat, and we need to jump into action, we have an incident handling team that is part of the service as well, that will jump on the phone and essentially quarterback the response for a customer. So you can kind of see where they need Microsoft's software, the foundation to have Defender, the identity stuff, the O365 component, like that whole layer has to be there, and we can't function without it, Edward. But we also have to have the data, the raw data coming in and the alerts, so that we can do that, the investigation. And so that's really the better together story we layer on than the real, the people that are doing this work and interacting with you as a customer of Red Canary plus Microsoft.
So talking through that, how much of that effort that your team puts together on the back end to look at these IOCs and develop these, threat exposures, how much of that actually benefits all of your customers? Because it seems to me like if you're looking at one customer and identifying whatever this path is, that's probably going to be useful, I guess, for all of your customers, right? Because you can apply that across the board.
Yeah, absolutely, Rod. That's a great way to look at it. In fact, we allow customization and some suppression at the customer level if they're interested in that. But for the most part, our detectors will run platform-wide, customer-wide. And so we find something, and typically it's not just a one-off, right? When you look across the customer base and those things start to pop up across others. And then, so that's a great value, Rod, as far as if you think of it as crowdsourcing, maybe, right? We find it in one and we see it in a many, but it's actually also true at the Microsoft level, right? Because you guys are watching with things like Mystic and threat experts and all the research teams and stuff like that. So we have regular connection. We're one of as far as I know, one of the few partners that have kind of the behind the scenes black box connections with a lot of the threat research teams, some teams channels going where we're sharing tactics even, and bad actors and the like, with some of the intelligence crew as well. We have 7 or 8 different entities, behind the scenes in Microsoft that we work with on a weekly or bi-weekly basis to make sure that we are sharing information. And so, Rod, to your point, if Microsoft Defender sends over a threat, let's say an alert, and we deem it to be a false positive, we actually have integrated at their request when we were over meeting with the team in Israel a year and a half ago. They said, hey, would you use our response API to send back like your take on what that alert is, if it's true positive, false positive, or not needed, informational. And so we took a little time to say, gosh, that's kind of giving them some of the some of the secret sauce, let's say, the black ops behind the scenes. But at the end of the day, honestly, our 3 founders, we kind of had a heart to heart and said, this is one of those turning points, it felt like, in a partnership where we either kind of keep the doors closed and say, we've got our stuff and you've got your stuff, or not, right? And so they made the call to say, yep, we are going to provide that API with ours. So all of our alert determinations, right, the investigation results get passed back to Microsoft. And it's one of those all boats rise, right? Yes, it will only help for us. We only, the Red Canary plus Microsoft customers are the only ones we see. By passing that back to you, then all Microsoft customers around the world, benefit from it. So we pass back our notes, our confirmed detection or our confirmed threat, as well as, false positive, true positive type of things. So we pass that signal back, and we've been doing that for a year and a half, which I think is a strong signal of the trust and the partnership, but also just the reality that, like, if we don't work together, right, they're going to pick us off as in this cybersecurity battle, as Rob Lefferts puts it. So that's a great point, Rod, and we share behind the scenes kind of that back channel information so that as we look forward here, we can spread that out across Microsoft customers and Red Canary as well.
Yeah, I love that. That's awesome. That's awesome.
I think just another kind of point there too, when we think about from a technical perspective about the usefulness of that information. I think architecturally, the way our standardizer works and the way that we're ingesting information is that it's not, when we think about detections, we're thinking about it more per platform and getting the value out of it that way, and not thinking about it based from a vendor specific approach. So because we support more than one vendor, because we support other entities, we do have such a degree of normalization that occurs that our detections really are more about applying intelligence to platform specific pieces of information. So you think really in the realm of indicators of compromise and how those could potentially play across multiple customers that are even using multiple EDR technologies, right? And they're getting the value that way. And our Intel team is very, very actively engaged in all the detections, regardless of vendor, right? So not only are we getting that value across the customer base, we're getting it across the vendor base as well. So it's all because of that fantastic level of normalization that occurs. And honestly, we have a really high benchmark for the fidelity of the telemetry that we require for our platform to operate properly, right? That's why we don't just support any vendor, right? Microsoft specifically has very, very good telemetry that streams. And so it allows us to really make those, to the application of detections to verified attacks pretty successfully across platforms and across customers.
Yeah, that's a good point, I think, because I would say we do a fairly good job. We've done, we've made some big investments in security and our security platforms over the past few years. I think we're doing a great job. But as with any vendor, we have customers that use things other than our products, which is boo. But still, they need that security coverage no matter what it is. And so to me, that's, exactly what you're talking about. To me, that's huge because, for example, there's this 12-year-old Linux vulnerability that everybody's talking about today, and now everybody's trying to look at their IOCs and trying to figure out how to detect. And if they're not using Defender for Linux, endpoint for Linux, or if they're not then they're going to need some kind of coverage to be able to detect that stuff. And I think Red Canary, you guys provide some kind of Linux detections and stuff too, right?
Yes. Yep. So we have a Linux product, or a cloud product. We just changed the name of it. So live on camera here, I'm not going to be able to pull it. It used to be called Cloud Workload Protection, but it's a very deep Linux sensor. And we also support what comes in through Defender, right? So Defender for Mac, Windows, and Linux. All of our detectors, as Joe mentioned, are their platform, let's say EDR sensor agnostic, right? And so we get it in, we normalize it, and then we run our engine and detectors against it. So Joe's point is well taken there, that it works. If we find a threat, for example, or something that's being used in Windows, it's going to detect, and across other platforms from those detectors. But there is a good, Rod, I think there's a good layout of functionality, probably too deep for this call to get into, but the Windows, Mac, and Linux Defender sensors are great at what they do, and some of the live response things that are available. Our Linux sensor kind of takes a little bit different approach, and so in certain cloud environments, the Windows one makes sense, and in others, our in-house built one is used with customers as well. And honestly, there's some blended environments, where we do have customers, like we were talking earlier, who've got, let's say, for whatever reason, they have Okta, let's say, we can use Okta from the identity alert side and integrate that right into the Defender for endpoint telemetry data, right, and vice versa. So that ability to integrate in a customer's environment is important, because, like you said, customers aren't always, single vendor across everything they do. So that's something we support. That being said, Microsoft it's the fastest growing EDR partner that we have and that we've seen. So it's been fun to be. I think I kind of did a general overview of what I've done at Red Canary, but forgot to mention that my role is the GM of Red Canary plus Microsoft partnership overall. So it's been really cool to see how these different aspects of the partnership, it's not just about software, right? It's about the go-to-market strategy and getting our sales teams aligned in the field. It's about aligning with engineering and product management over in Israel as we work on developing these things together. And we have a number of private preview, but even before that, design partner type relationships and efforts going as well. And so across if we looked at we mapped out our Microsoft coverage, if you will, and I think there's between 8 and 10 teams that we interact with on a regular basis. And I think you put all that together, and that's what really is the foundation of the partnership, but also of our Better Together story, and why it's so much more than just a software integration, right? So. Good questions there.
So let me ask you this question. Without being able to have the visual representation of the product and see all the the portal and everything, describe to me the lift. You just won a deal. I am a 10,000 seat MDE customer, both desktop and server workloads. And I signed an agreement with you guys. What's that onboarding like? Is it a heavy lift? Is it more of, give us dedicated stuff like Lighthouse, or is it an API crawl? Give me not to go into the weeds too much, but atypical to connect your new customer's environment to your managed SOC onboarding partnership platform. What does that look like?
So I'm gonna pull Joe in to give you the kind of the one layer deeper, but the really cool part about, I don't call many deployments beautiful, but the way that Microsoft has deployed Defender for endpoint in that Defender ecosystem, the way that works, it's pretty close to it for me, right? So because it's dumping all of that data from the endpoints, whether it's server, let's call it computer, right? Server, cloud, whatever it is, it's dumping that into the cloud. Behind the scenes, it's just stored in Azure. We simply give the customer our event hub ID through a little deployment of an app, and it starts teeing off that information, and that stream of data flows. And that as far as the core, like get us the data. What used to be, weeks, months long of an integration or a full-blown, consulting engagement to deploy things. It's literally give us the ID, drop it, and we start seeing the data. It's a beautiful thing. But obviously that's a little bit simplified as far as what has to happen bigger picture. But at the core of it, it's just literally moving the customer's data from their Azure Event Hub over to us, and then we ingest it and standardize it. So that part of it is super smooth. Joe, you want to give a little bit more color there?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's really kind of a two-phase approach, right? The first phase, like Cordell mentioned, is going to be, let's get information, start to establish trust and get access to our customers' information. And there's really kind of two sides there. One is the streaming API data export that I'm sure you guys are pretty familiar with inside of MDE. And the second is just an Azure function application that you guys are going to approve our access to the Defender API in order to pull the data and update the information on our portal in real time. So that can gather alerts and metadata about the associated machines and what have you. The second piece is really to support our internal detection engineers and our incident handlers for when things, go bump in the night. We need to be able to jump into your console. We have tons of visibility from the Red Canary side. Okay. And I don't want to sell that short, because we can see every single thing that comes out of advanced hunting. So every single piece of telemetry is being assembled on our side, and we have full visibility into that detection and that set of data. But there are still some times when it is valuable for us to put hands on a Microsoft console. And for that, we're actually leveraging Azure Identity Governance right now. Now, I know that Lighthouse, for Microsoft 365 is just coming out in public preview now, and there's a lot of great things that are associated with that. But for now, we're leveraging identity governance. We're creating essentially a custom role inside of Defender that allows us to have that access that we need, applying that to a group and creating an access package and establishing that Azure B2B trust, just like you would for any other type of access package. So what that essentially allows us to do is dynamically gain access, to our customers' environments. Our customers are establishing that, hey, we trust Red Canary as an external entity. It's quick and easy for us to hop into their console if we need to start to run something down, or we just need a greater look with something like our live response or something like that. Right. So we do have that capability to do that as well. But like Cordell mentioned, it's really pretty painless. And actually, we have a public facing help site, help.redcanary.com. And if you click on the Defender, help with Defender, there's actually a series of video tutorials I did that walk through the onboarding process in detail. So if folks are really interested in understanding how it connects, both from the streaming API perspective, as well as the Defender API and identity governance, we have a very, very detailed click-by-click video series on there.
So Joe, I want to ask you a quick question here. As I look at this, your company seems to be a very symbiotic entity, meaning they have to run something. Silent, SentinelOne, CrowdStrike, MDE, Carbon Black. Is that a true statement? Is that a true assumption on my part that you can't come here without something? You have to have this, and we're going to make you better by being able to give you more actionable intelligence and insights into that thing you have. Am I correct in that you have to have something?
Cordell did mention that we have a Linux sensor agent product, but for the most part, yes, our service exists by ingesting sensor telemetry from existing EDR products and vendors and their supported platforms.
So I'm gonna put you on the spot here. You get a recommendation. You get a sales lead, 10,000 seat customer. I don't know if 10,000 too small for you guys. You can answer that a little bit later, but 10,000 seats. Let's make it easy. Let's make it 8,000 Windows 10, 11, and then they got a 2,000 server, both, cloud and on-premise. And they say, we want to use your product because we don't want to have this heavy lift. We need a partner to help us understand and know what we don't know. Which product are you going to lead with? Which you going to recommend to the customer?
Well, we're gonna have a bias here. Cordell and I are obviously gonna lead with Microsoft, right?
Oh.
But I mean, I don't know that I can answer that question any other way, honestly. But I can't speak for all of Red Canary when I say that. But
yeah,
the Joe Savini answer is
it's a fair question, Ed. We have the Microsoft hat on them. The Microsoft team here at Red Canary, obviously with strong bias there, but we get pulled into those discussions from time to time. Honestly, more and more of them are on another platform, considering moving to Microsoft. That is most of the discussions in that transition environment. It's becoming more and more rare where we would walk into an environment where they've never heard of EDR, don't know what an endpoint sensor is, don't know what Defender, those types of discussions. They're still out there. They're using maybe the AV side of it and then some other tools and stuff, and they don't quite use EDR at that level. Those are somewhat few and far between. But our sales team would sit down and have a discussion with them, right? Have an analysis and dig in a little bit deeper. Because we are a trusted advisor, we don't just say, okay, we have a strategic partner and we recommend them in every scenario, right? The idea is that we understand the nuances up until I would just a quick example, up until the last release of Live Response on Mac, which really wiped out a lot of these gaps. If they had a huge Mac environment, half or more, whatever, in that, let's say, of a 10,000 endpoint customer, big enough to make a difference, let's say, it was tough to recommend Defender because the Mac Live Response piece of it wasn't available. And so if a threat was starting to rip through on the Mac side, we couldn't cover it. So we had to go to some others. We did have blended environments. Oh, sorry, Joe. You're trying to.
No, I was going to say, or a perfect example of that is a lot of our customers that we support with down level servers, right? Which I think Ed mentioned, like a lot of these older servers, the support was initially for the first couple of years was spotty there. And so, I mean, I think we did encounter a lot of deals where, customers would have that environment and that could be a showstopper for us. So,
or we would do, it's not ideal, but we'd have a blended environment, right? Where you'd have partial CB, and actually we've had even customers that had three, that for a while before all the in-game Elastic stuff, they'd have, in-game CB and Defender and trying to manage all three of these. And so one of the things that we've worked on in the past couple of years is the down level server project. Joe was working directly with the folks over in Israel to get that beefed up. And man, when they rolled that out, really opened up some doors. And then when the Mac Live Response thing rolled out, right, it's becoming harder and harder to, for those holdouts to really make it true. Or to really make a decision that don't align here. And another interesting kind of industry trend that we're seeing, let's say customer trend overall, is just the power of the E5 license. I mean, you can't argue that, right? So
there's nothing like it. Absolutely.
Satya was super visionary. When he joined 5 years ago, one of the ways that we've experienced Microsoft as a partner, right, is people love to give tools, software tools, a bad rap. And back in the day, we would uninstall, as an IT admin, I'd usually uninstall Defender and put the free stuff on because it worked better, right? And so a lot of those types of let's call it baggage or whatever, those teams and tools, Satya came in and said, we're going to, in 5 years, I think it was a 5-year plan, we're going to be the best, the top in everything. And we're either going to, rip it out and replace it, divest it, whatever, we're going to make a change here. And those things stuck. And I tell you what, customers were kind of I would say 2-3 years back, they were starting to pay attention, but skeptical. A couple 1-2 years back, it's like, okay, but man, over the last year-ish, not only the customers, but also the analysts and the industry folks are like, okay, their money's where their mouth is. They've invested in this heavily, and they're here to stay. And so what that E5 license has done is because Defender on the AV side and the EDR side are now so competitive and top right in the quadrants, it's pretty tough. We're seeing the CFO offices actually from a financial side at customers saying, okay, we've made the decision to go with E5 because of Teams and Office. And I mean, they go through the whole, and oh, by the way, Defender's plugged in there as well. Do we have a different AV solution? Why? Right?
Why?
Yeah.
Why not consolidate?
It becomes a little hard to justify another line item, especially when it can be quite substantial, right? Exactly. We're not, from a feature perspective, we're not talking about feature parity. We're talking about, in some ways, Defender is literally better than a lot of the competition, and not just some ways, it's a lot of ways. So
so that's kind of the bigger umbrella there, Ed, is if especially if the E5 story is in the picture at all, it makes it pretty tough for our customers to stay with other tracks, right? And so we kind of we'll encourage that and help that along, right? So
I appreciate you and Cordell, you and Joe answering my question, even though as I think about this scenario that I presented you with was more to validate me asking a question, because it's not realistic. If you go to a customer that has 10,000 anything and they're not using it, they got bigger issues, right? I can only think of maybe one industry that got close to that, and that's really, education. And that's different reasons, right? They always, and then maybe healthcare, like resources, like a skill set, things like that. And they've been using legacy stuff. I saw something this week and I scratched my head. I can't mention the customer here. I'm like, what? And so, but thank you for walking me through that. But you're right. I should have came in like 1,000 seat or something like that. That may be possible, but nobody's running 10,000 endpoints. It's not using something. It may be a legacy or old school, McAfee, semantic or something, right? So, but I appreciate you at least talking that through it and not saying, Ed, nobody is not using something at 10,000 seats, dude, or they're using it illegally, right? So
and pumping up E5 too. That was a great explanation on E5. The one of the unbelievable product. Yeah.
Yeah. E5 is super powerful. I only have one problem with the SKU. Is that they fixed it, but they still didn't evangelize. Is that a lot of customers say, "Hey, man, I get you, but this thing is the thing, but I don't need the collaboration. Please extrapolate that from it." And that's number one scenario. I don't need that. Right? We have advanced call center stuff that just Teams and whatever, it's not going to work.
Fair.
But the other scenario that I see is, and I think this is why CrowdStrike is remaining relevant. And I don't know how long that's going to last, because they're trying to emulate Microsoft too much, in my opinion, because they're trying to build out a complete platform, but not really have a SKU. Is that, yep, I'm all about that MDE. Sign me up. But I don't want MCAS, and I don't want MDI, and I don't want these other things. And it's so hard for Microsoft to be able to pivot and just sell the E5 SKU. They've made some toe in the water, I believe, by allowing it to have M365 for business, being able to have a cheaper SKU to buy that. But I think that
MD Plan 1, I think, was released recently just for that CrowdStrike compete. Yeah, you're right. That was a tough gap for some customers who wanted that isolated a la carte aspect of it, to be fair. You're right.
And it's hard to tell a customer, buy it, and you always entitle and use it when you want to on board, because I think we sometimes forget that a lot of these security practitioners are doing two things in the industry. They're doing a day-to-day and they're doing project-based work. Your boss comes in and says, implement this. So in addition to me having to monitor an environment, answer tickets in ServiceNow, whatever they may be using, now they have to go out and have a deployment, thing, unless they hire, Brody to come in and do it, right? He's handpicked to come in and do the work. But hey, I know we're at 6. This is the general amount of time that we have. There's so much more about Red Canary that we could talk about. So to our listeners, redcanary.com, the way it sounds. If you don't know how to spell Canary, you can do a bunch of Bing searches, look up something like Atomic Red Team and all this other stuff. You'll start seeing a lot of these things. As we get ready to go ahead.
I know you're wrapping up. One quick plug, though. Atomic Red Team is our open source project. Let's call it that. That's there. Clearly no revenue. It's true, full on open source. We started it. We support it, but it's now out in the ether. It's a testing framework to really run atomic level tests against and map to the MITRE framework. Just to give the folks on the call that are listening at least a quick snapshot of that. And one of the interesting developments that just came about last month was that we approached the Defender team and said, hey, you've got a couple other testing frameworks in Defender, but you got to pay to use them, right? What if you just put Atomic Red Team in Defender? And so it's now in the Defender console, the Defender for Endpoint. You can use Atomic Red Team right there. So kind of a cool partnership integration there.
Plug away. That's great.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. So, you know, as we get ready to wind down the podcast, anything you guys want to share, because we can't ask all the right questions. You guys know what's important to be able to get out and evangelize your product. So I'll start with you, Joe. Give me a tidbit. Tell me, give our listeners at least a reason to type into their browser of choice, redcanary.com.
I think it's what Cordell mentioned about Security Ally is just super true. And you know, from my viewport here as a product specialist, I'm involved a lot with enabling customers to ensure that they have not only just throughout the onboarding process, but that their environment is sane from a Microsoft perspective. And I think that a lot of other vendors really aren't taking the extra time or going the extra mile with that product expertise to ensure that, you know, having the conversations with customers. I mean, you know, Microsoft's complex. You know, there's a lot of ways to deploy and manage. You know that there's a lot of ways to get out there and create policy. And I think, you know, it is a challenge for a lot of customers. And, you know, the fact that not only are we there just to ingest that data and to make sure that you're secure, but we're actually doing some degree of assurance of product integrity and configuration along those lines. That's a huge differentiator when you start to look at other MDR specific providers, along with the incident handling and other things that Cordell had mentioned during that. So to me, you know, why would I type in redcanary.com into a browser and what would that be if my elevator pitch? To me, it is the true security ally, right? It is someone that, you know, when you're subscribing to that MDR service, it's not just, it's not an MSSP. It's not someone, we're not just responding to alerts. This is so many levels deeper than that. And that's why I would encourage people to get interested in finding out more about Red Canary.
Very cool. I would present the same question to you, Cordell.
Well, I would say if you want to add just another system to your environment that's going to just generate a lot more noise and alerts, don't call us.
Okay, I was wondering where you were going with that. Okay.
So those are reasons not to. But I guess in all seriousness, the CISO who may be listening, or the threat analyst that's working on the teams, the security analyst at that level, they know what it's like, right? Kind of the day in the life is everybody has to watch the queue. Everybody has to, do overnight type 24/7 type stuff if they're in that environment. And so the reason is that, hey, we have a trusted partner that can reduce the noise, and by that we dial down. Not that Defender creates noise in and of itself, but there's a lot of informational notifications, lightning bolts, red thing, there's things always happening in your environment. And so what Red Canary provides is this kind of this quieting effect, right? Like, we've got it, we're looking at it. We don't have to live in the alert consoles anymore, even ours, right? Like our goal is to get customers out of those and to be able to focus on their more important jobs. So if you've got a team that is looking to increase their coverage, give Red Canary a call. If you've got a team that's maybe strapped or looking to go 24/7 and not sure how to do it, or they want to really kind of make sense of the masses of alerts sources that they have, that's something that we bring. So it's kind of the calm and the quiet, and then it allows you to listen to the bad a lot better and respond a lot better when you're not constantly playing whack-a-mole. So. Okay.
Hey, let me ask another question. This is around your customer base. Right? Are you guys prominent in regulated industries, especially agencies, DOD, EOE, DOE, AEIOU? What is your presence and footprint inside? I don't like to just use the word government, because that could be federal, SLG. But I'll just say both. Are you guys finding adoption of your product in some of those industries that definitely need you? Because every time I look up and realize that my tax records are being sold in Albania, and then my healthcare records are being sold in Canada, right? They're just stealing IDs in Canada. So what's your footprint in those regulated industries or agency industries?
No, the answer is no. We don't have traction there. And the main reason is we are not FedRAMP or GCC certified. We've held off on that. And just to make it clear for the folks that are listening, we are looking at that this year. So that is something that's coming, but that's been a very intentional choice. Now we do have state and local governments. We do have agencies. We have large educational institutions, part of state and federal type stuff. So that we do have some of those because there are some nuances where if the telemetry is streamed out and it doesn't have PII, like we were able to agree that that those types of systems may not need as much compliance because they are monitoring only. But for the most part, if you require FedRAMP, we're not in that today. Looking at that in the future.
Yeah, I get it because, the cloud providers, always GCC High, FedRAMP, all these, and then I'll give you this little piece. Yeah, I would sit on my hands a little bit until Microsoft figures out the parity issue. I hate presenting something. Then when you go to one of these agencies, oh, that's not for you guys just yet, right? And they throw their hands up. Like, well, hold on, why even talk about this when it's not available, for us? So I just wanted to ask that question because, the greatest need, if in my humble opinion, is those agencies that mean they're being killed, and they're aging out their cyber people and not recruiting enough, and they keep looking at employees as the only resource where you got to have a partner, someone who say your success is my success. If you go down, I go down. Right? We got to make sure we do this, and that's not unrealistic SLAs. Like we can respond in 20 minutes. That makes no sense. It's called a 0 day. So I need you to respond in 0 minutes, right? Well, I need you to do that. So when I see folks with unreasonable SLAs and stuff, I'm like, what does that really mean? Are you going to page me on Pager now or something? But I'm glad you guys don't do that, right? Just say, hey, we'll detect it so that we know something's going on, but we're not going to cry wolf until we say, hey, wake everybody up. I think we got something. Yeah. Get everybody up out of the bed. We need to talk, right? And some of those may be false. But I tell you what, a customer would rather you wake them up for something that's not true than to wake them up to let them know they need to update their resume. Right? So you definitely want the resume update call going on. Franklin, you've been extremely quiet. Is it because you got a haircut today? Is that what I'm seeing?
Great haircut, Franklin.
No haircut. I'm just extremely busy today. So
extremely busy.
That's okay.
Well, gentlemen,
deadlines.
thank you so much for coming on the show. You're always welcome. You don't have to wait for an invite. If you want to come on and say, hey, guess what we just did? We'd love to be here to talk about it. Just give us a little bit of notice so we can make sure that we have an opening. And you're always welcome to come on the show.
And thanks for being great allies.
Great allies. Security
really
ally. I wrote it down, right? I'm going to steal that.
That's great.
SA. I'm a security ally.
We spend a lot of time picking that word, right? Is it the right one?
Ally. Yeah.
People even use that word anymore.
We are. We're going to promote it. Absolutely.
One last thing, would you be willing to get us a NFR so we can put into our lab so we can basically, there are some times that we do go live. We do video and demos, and we do that. We post on Twitch, and I can post on YouTube. Frank can't. So I'll push on YouTube. Frank was banned from YouTube. Frank was probably banned.
Just go with it, Frank. Just go with it.
Yeah. Are you still in legal battles with Microsoft right now, man? Is that what's?
No.
Frank,
I do have one question though.
Okay.
Because don't you guys have this open source project where you put out the different sort of attacks? Am I right about that?
Atomic
talked about that. Yeah.
So, I actually use that as a foundation for the multiple attacks that are in the SC200 courseware. And I actually call out your open source project in the SC200 courseware, by the way. So if you go out to GitHub, learn SC200, you could see that out there. But I think that people that are spending time evaluating what can be seen or not seen with inside MDE, going out and running those attacks, or I modify them for specifically what I needed, is great value. So people understand what data is being collected by MDE, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Hey,
awesome.
One other thing, I would like to have you both back. You sort of teased us with the additional capabilities around Sentinel identity. Maybe in a few weeks, you guys will get that story together. And I think our customers will want to hear about that, because when you're selling E5, you're getting all the platform, and then we would love for you to use Sentinel, right? But if you guys have a Sentinel play and you having other security workloads plays out of the E5 SKU, we'd love to hear about those. I mean, it's only so much you can do in an hour, but we'll find some time that you guys get that whole story together and come back on and talk, because a lot of times if people are consuming E5, there's a good possibility of using Sentinel. It may not be their single SIM, because I'm seeing a lot of parallel installs lately. People are running both. Right?
Same.
They're like, yeah, best of both worlds, right? Which allows them to have migration options. I'm gonna not renew with Exabeam this year. I'm not gonna renew with QRadar. I'm gonna run this, right? So
there's
we'll
some
reach
very
out to
interesting. Yeah, we should do that. There's some interesting value propositions there, including some of the, Sentinel. One of the knocks early on was just the costs of data. If you just throw everything in there, right, the kind of mushroom. So we have some interesting value adds where we can, because we're taking that Defender data stream in real time and we're ingesting it. Maybe it's long-term storage, but it doesn't have to go through as much, and we can help lower some of the costs on Sentinel side, but bigger picture, the Sentinel integration story is there. I think the identity side ties well into the zero trust stuff. We would, it would do, I think this Caldwell and the customer is a good service to just come back and talk more about the identity side and what we're doing there. And then I would also just propose or throw out there that we've built a team, a community management team internally, and the head of that community management group, really Atomic Red Team is kind of his thing, right? So he's our lead on that front. Would be super helpful. I think Frank, as much as you've used it, to bring some of those folks in and let them talk about Atomic Red Team. It's kind of become a testing framework in its own right. There's a lot to talk about there.
Yeah, I heard good stuff about it. Yeah.
I do have one final question for you. Do you find any value at all in Microsoft Cloud App Security?
Is this a loaded question?
Yes, it is. It is.
Did you hear the slide go back?
Being set up.
You hear the chamber,
I mean, we've talked MDE, we've talked identity. I just haven't heard anything about Cloud App Security.
Oh no, it's on the far. It was the last one on the integration. It is coming. Yes.
Cool.
It's MCAS. It's not called MCAS anymore. What is it?
Correct.
Microsoft Defender for Cloud Applications.
There you go. Yeah.
Apps, not
Cloud apps.
applications.
Cloud apps. Yeah.
Apps.
So yes, it is. In fact, we hired our newish now. It's been I guess half a year, but our new Chief Trust Officer Rob Reck was used to be over at Ping, the CISO at Ping Identity, joined us and is kind of spearheading a lot of that. The industry perspective on the data sources, and that's one of the apps is honestly one of his kind of next frontier type of things of what's happening there. Are we watching it? Are we paying close enough attention? What more could we do there? So I would say that's one of the on the horizon for us, right? We're really digging in deep on identity now. Got endpoint nailed in spades, right? Identity, the email piece, and some of the business email compromise. But we're actually starting some of the early stuff on cloud and the app side. Yes.
Very cool. So what we'll do is, I took a bunch of notes from the podcast. I'll make sense of them in one note.
On sticky notes, as he normally
sticky
does.
notes, although I still like. So what we'll do is we'll find. I'll reach back out to you guys, figure out when we can get that, find the appropriate people to come on the call to talk about this additional capability you guys have, probably sometime in March. We're booked out for February, but we'd definitely love to have you guys back on.
I think getting that community manager in, and so this is a good thing for you, Rod, on your KQL side about running those attacks and seeing it go through is important. I think it's actually one of the strongest parts of the SC200 Sentinel course is actually running those attacks and learning about the data and so on. So I think that's a very important learning tool for people learning to use Sentinel and KQL.
Yeah.
In fact, we can do that one sooner than later. That team is up and cranking, and that there's a lot of it's content in its own right. So atomicredteam.io, all one word, redteam.io is the page for that, and then obviously it'll spin you off into the repositories. Frank, I just wanted to highlight, because I mentioned earlier, I don't know if you caught that, Atomic Red Team is now integrated into Defender for Endpoint. So if you go into the test harness, you remember where you could do some of the framework stuff, it's in there now as well. So
yeah, very cool. I'm looking, so that came up. Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for your time. Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Cordell. To our listeners, redcanary.com. Check them out. Make your life easier. You're not getting the update your resume call. Also, check out Atomic Red Team as far as their detections and attacks methodologies that are also integrated into Microsoft Defender for Endpoint. With that being said, thank you guys for joining the show. I know more about it now than I got from the interview process, but now I know, right? I guess if I had done my research.
Now he knows why they didn't pick him.
I know
now,
Canary.
Like, maybe now we'll hire you. Maybe now we'll hire you.
No, I think this is good.
I was just thinking we could trade Joe for Edward.
I'd like that actually. Yeah, that'd be good.
On that note, to our listeners,
I get to run a podcast?
So much.
Yeah, Joe, you do.
Exciting things that are going to be coming up here soon that we got in the works. I think we're going to have some more interesting guests that are going to be coming onto the show, and we're definitely going to talk about some technologies while they're part of the E5 SKU. We've never really had anybody, so we're going to have some program managers from Microsoft to come on and talk about MDO. So everyone stay tuned. We're going to be having an exciting next 2 months for guests and learning. So thank you very much.